So, very good evening to all. I'm Vijayananja and extremely excited to welcome you all, our guests and participants, and fellow Cyber Gurukul members to yet another insightful and interesting session in cyberspace. Mr. Alvin, we are extremely privileged with your valuable presence and looking forward for this topic, Modernize Network Security with DNS as strategy.
Thank you, sir.
Vinny,
Thank you, sir.
happy to hear you in between for your valuable input. Participants, chat box is open and we would like to hear you or your doubts you can put in between session, and at the end of the session we can have Q&A. So you can feel free to put your questions in chat box. Now, Harsh, take this forward, this wonderful opportunity to introduce this session of Cyber Gurukul and set the context. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Vijaya. Well, let's first talk about Cyber Gurukul. At Cyber Gurukul, we aim to enable, engage, empower. See, we have this, kind of this enthusiasm, this passion for cybersecurity. We have that urge for ambitious growth. And driven with this, together, we enable this inspirational journey of constant knowledge sharing, learning, getting upskilled, reskilled according to the cyber trends. We also engage, and over here it's the best example. We engage with the different stakeholders in this industry, and that's how we get a 360 degrees and a PPT centric approach to the different cyber landscape topics, as well as respect, have a solution oriented approach to the roles and constraints that each one of us play, and empower and get empowered in this process as a community. Cyber Gurukul, also aims to be that cybersecurity consultant and storyteller to the community at large and to our stakeholders. Isn't it? You would have observed that till now. And in this process, it's in fact a need of the hour also. And in this process, we also aim to bridge that gap between cybersecurity professionals, business, and community at large. Whatever I have just said is something that all of us believe in, isn't it? In fact, major of us are already in action towards this. And that's the reason I say this very proudly, that there's a part of Cyber Gurukul in each one of us. Together, we are Cyber Gurukul. And today, so many of us joining matters so much. It proves that there is a part of Cyber Gurukul in so many of us. I understand it's also a festive today, so happy Onam to all over here. And thank you so much for everyone to join here. But having Mr. Elvin as our key speaker today, I'm sure we'll make the best of it. Well, yes, it's also the time to introduce Elvin to our forum. Mr. Elvin Rodrigues. He has garnered 25 plus years of experience in the IT and cybersecurity industry. He is definitely an industry veteran and a true business technologist. In fact, he's currently heading Infoblox as Field Chief Security Officer APAC level, and has also been part of reputed organizations like Forcepoint, Fortinet, Palo Alto, etc. We are definitely very eager to leverage his experience here. And by the way, were you aware that he has also been a frequent speaker at esteemed events like Gartner, IDG, DSCI, etc. In fact, he carries equal passion to also groom the young minds. He is also delivering business mapped cybersecurity lectures to the upcoming budding professionals, to the postgrad students. Isn't it really amazing? I really appreciate, Elvin, that this kind of a balance I've seen in few only. And Elvin, we are equally eager to listen to this interesting, insightful session that you'll be bringing, which will be definitely just represent you, that perfect blend of business acumen and technology. Alvin, before going forward, I really want to hear few words from you, and I really have to represent Cyber Gurukul core members and extended family to as well thank you, for gracing Cyber Gurukul platform. I realize that a veteran like you, a kind of a champion like you joining, a thought leader like you joining us in this session, taking out time, also knowing that you just had your second dose yesterday, means a lot to us. Selvin, why don't we hear a little from you before going forward?
Well, thank you very much for that really, really grand introduction. I did not expect anything that grand. And actually, now I'm becoming a bit nervous because now those are very big shoes that you have me to fill at this particular session. Some things I just wanted to share. What I put together is actually a very straightforward, a simple presentation about rethinking your security strategy and about harnessing and looking at how your company is transitioning and how do you then look at capitalizing on your existing solution that's actually available in your company to protect that transition, and why this is now only becoming coming to light, and I will talk through all those kinds of scenarios. I promise you I may not have the answers for everything that you might ask, but I will definitely do my best to answer your questions. I generally engage at the strategy and executive level in many of the organizations I speak to. So if you do come up with any technical questions, I will take note of that. And if I am not able to answer it here and now, I hope you can give me your email address and we'll be happy to give you the answers to them as well.
That's amazing, Elvin, and we definitely are very keen to hear you out, and very kind words from you as well. So thank you for that.
And it's an honor and privilege to be here, and thank you for the invitation.
Thank you, Elvin. The honor is all ours. And in fact, let me do one thing. I know we are not here to hear me. We are here to hear Elvin. So I'll quickly set the context and then get to him. But you'll have to bear me for next 3 minutes again. Anyways, so let's get to the topic now. See, if I talk about year 2020, I think it's known to all of us that it has redefined normalcy for each one of us. And year 2021 has kind of followed the suit, isn't it? In fact, in the wake of this accelerated digital transformation that we say, of course, pushed by the pandemic situation, we have actually entered the remote era. And work from home, a kind of this hybrid IT culture has become a full-fledged reality. Data now, of course, is the new parameter. Data can be stored, accessed, shared anytime, anywhere, any device in true sense, isn't it? In fact, let's also, thank the contribution of DNS as an enabler also to digital adoption. After all, it's the common entry across the hybrid ID. It may be on edge, that is the endpoints, or your cloud or prim infrastructure, isn't it? But at the same time, this has also been the most neglected vector in terms of security. And so it has become highly vulnerable. No wonder this boon is now becoming a bane, and we need to take very quick action towards this. In fact, if I have to quote over here, the recent IDC 2021 Global DNS Threat Report, DNS attacks is a danger that must not be overlooked. Simple reason being, DNS is the first level of entry, and it has all the more, in last 2 years become the primary, kind of a prime target of the hackers, maybe in form of, zero-day threats, identity theft, data theft, malwares, etc. And as per that report that I was just mentioning, globally 87% of the organization in last 1 year have been affected, have been victim to these DNS attacks, with the average cost of $950K and an average attacks in numbers of 7.6 for the organization globally. But it's also more disheartening to see that this has worsened in India, which has crossed more than 10, also highest in Asia. Well, this is definitely a situation that demands our attention. There is also a silver lining. 76% of this survey, the respondents, have understood, have been aware the importance of DNS security as not only being that critical component for network architecture, but also the first line of defense. And now I will request Elvin to help us decode DNS as a strategy to not only gain that unified visibility across hybrid IT, but also how we can actually build an effective security strategy and threat intel at DNS level. And let's finally not forget the $1,000,000 question: how to actually assess, how to actually get, identify those potential gaps and revisit our current cyber defense landscape. So with this, Alvin, I hand it over to you. I'm very keen to leverage your experience and learn some tips and tricks here of exactly how to do this. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. And again, thank you very much for this opportunity to share with the audience here. Can you guys see my screen? I believe I shared screen, or
you'll have to reshare because I was sharing it.
Oh, okay, no problem.
Yes.
Okay. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, very much.
Okay. So what I'll do in today's session is essentially to really narrow down and zero in on, when you think about your security strategy, what are the gaps in your current security strategy? I'm using that as the foundation base for this entire conversation. But having described that, the way that I will be taking this presentation is that I will be looking at identifying what is actually happening in the marketplace. And two key things are actually driving the marketplace right now. Digital transformation, and as a result of digital transformation, the move towards embracing cloud, as we move more and more of our workloads onto the cloud. Now, the interesting thing is that when we do this, right, the level of operation and the level of structure and the workflows all become more and more complex. So what do we need to do to look at managing our security across this entire platform? Because the more complex it becomes, we will lose things like control. We will have fragmented visibility, and as a result, we won't have that security that we all desire. And we also know that as a result of that, your perimeter, your once beloved perimeter around the organization is now completely dissolved, because the perimeter is now all completely at the edge. So this is where I want to talk about the positioning of DNS in the light of that, whereby the DNS is one of the common denominators across this entire platform. And I want to expand that conversations from DNS to look at DDI. And what DDI essentially means is DNS, DHCP, and IPAM working in concert together. And I'll touch a bit more about that later. Working in concert together to enable you to harness this information that you already have and that you are already gathering in your organization to improve your security posture as a whole. Okay, so with that, let me just kick into my conversation. Let me kick into my presentation, and I also sum it up with some key takeaways, some things you need to bear in mind. But let me kickstart into a situation that we all are very familiar with that's happening today: digital transformation. Now, when we all first started to embrace digital transformation, that notion of digital transformation, different companies have different mindsets and have different opinion about what it is all about. But essentially, it's about embedding and embracing technology in everything that we do, so that we can find new ways to do an old thing. And at the same time, when we do that, we identify new markets for existing solutions, or we identify new products for existing markets, or new services for existing markets. Simple examples are all around us: Airbnb, Facebook, Amazon, and so on and so forth. But when companies first start to think about digital transformation, and this is a report from Deloitte, and Deloitte was talking about it from a financial company perspective, they actually identified 9 key challenges. But the main thing that we need to keep in mind is that there are both internal and external challenges that a company faces in its transformation journey. Because when you think about digital transformation, they are looking at transformation externally for the customers and internally for business operation. Okay, hence, as a result of that, they start to look at what are the prerequisites for success to drive that from an internal perspective, and what are the enablers that they will be looking at to allow them to drive for that success. And at the same time, they look towards external partnerships. So remember, I talked about it being internal and external. They look for external partnerships to also drive this activity, and hence it becomes an ecosystem play. As we can see right now, that everything is all about community, everything is all about getting and coming together and being connected. Now, COVID hit, okay, and I don't know whether to say that COVID is a wonderful or a terrible thing. Like anything, there are merits and demerits. Of course, right now, from a health perspective, it's a real downer, right? And I would still stand by my guns that it is a bad thing, right? But at the same time, it got us to wake up, to rethink about how do we do things. So there were fundamental shifts in the way that we work, in the way that we engage, in the way that we started to interact with one another. And that forced a lot of pressure on changes that we need to make on both our internal enablers and our external partnerships that we look at for an organization. And one of the biggest downside, or one of the biggest challenge to digital transformation, is the need for cybersecurity. Because as you transform, things becomes more complicated. You start offloading more and more services onto the cloud and so on and so forth. Now, the interesting thing about this is that in a McKinsey study, right, COVID was actually the catalyst for digital transformation. Because when you look at this column over here, these are all the timeline for the digital initiative of many organizations that are planning to move towards, and the amount of time that they were planning to take to complete those projects. On average, they were somewhere in the region of 1.5 years to 2 years. But because of COVID and because of the need to survive, because of business resiliency to drive those agendas, and because of the need to continue to deliver value to their customer base, what would normally take 1.5 to 2 years is all completed in less than 30 days. Okay. If you would like to know the title of this report, you can drop Vinny an email or Harsh an email, and I'm happy to share with you exactly where this report is located. Done by McKinsey. It's a very, very provocative read, because it not only talks about initiatives that have accelerated and perhaps even some shortcuts that have been taken as a result of deploying that, but it also speaks about it is likely to stick post-COVID, which means the whole idea about workforce, fluid workforce, as you have seen, Microsoft has announced that some jobs will be remote work, and the concept of remote work, not that is a new thing, or work from home or work from anywhere, it's not a new thing. The thing that is new that COVID actually drove is the need for 90% or 100% of the workforce to be working from home, as opposed to in the past whereby they would have provisioned VPNs and all the other kinds of security services to allow 20 to 30% of their workforce to work from home. So that's a very, very different mindset and very different shift. So all that places a lot of stress on the existing infrastructure, so much so that companies need to rethink how are they going to be modernizing, how are they going to be restructuring their business, which I'll talk a little bit about later on the need of modernizing your network to embrace a collaborative platform. So the key takeaway from this slide is all the areas that we have seen that were executed in under 30 days, they are likely to stick. All these elements are likely to stick based on this analysis over here. And again, it came from the same McKinsey report. So if you are thinking about how are you going to be getting back to the office, rethink that again. Some of your organization will say that if you have been successfully working remotely, we will continue on this journey. Now, having described that, of course, putting cybersecurity aside, companies need to rethink how do they manage, how do they measure the performance of people who are doing remote work, or how do we measure the success of a company as it offloads more and more of its workflow onto the cloud to continue to deliver that value to their installed base, to their customers, and even to maintain their existing market share or even to grow the market share. Having described that, when you think about it from another perspective, there is a symbiotic relationship between the business, your digital footprint, and cybersecurity. Because if you look at what has happened over the last 10 to 15 years, when the business shifts, your digital footprint, which is your network or your infrastructure, also changes. And subsequently, your cybersecurity posture also changes as well. So when we all first began and embraced cybersecurity, we had the wonderful perimeter. Everything was around the mindset of a moat and castle kind of defense. So your digital footprint over here was all about protecting your network, all about protecting your infrastructure, all about protecting your data center on your premise. But when your company started to embrace cloud, independent of digital transformation, and worse still, when it looked at embracing digital transformation and embraced cloud in a bigger fashion, where now you have a hybrid environment of on-prem and on-cloud, or maybe even solution at the edge, your demands on the networks pivoted. Now, as a result of that, it pivots to support your business that is pivot. right? But you cannot keep to your old way of doing your cybersecurity. Your cybersecurity strategy also needs to pivot. So all the different strategy that you had on-prem, you now need to think about how am I going to deploy those kind of mindset and those kinds of strategy onto a cloud or onto the edge environment? How do I maintain visibility? How do I manage? How do I drive greater control and management as a result of that? So your security has to pivot. Now, the challenge that we have is not all of us are ready for that pivot. Yes, the business may say that they want to pivot. Your infrastructure may not be ready to pivot, or your security may not be able to pivot. Hence, that in turn becomes your area of vulnerability. So in order for you to pivot effectively, what you need to achieve on your footprint is you need now not just visibility, as you once had when you were completely on-prem. You have complete visibility of everything that was happening over there, and that visibility gave you the ability to look at absolute control about shadow IT, about insider, about emails, and so on and so forth. But now with an on-prem, on-cloud, and at the edge, you need unified visibility. And with unified visibility, you can only get that when you have that clarity across the entire platform. And with unified visibility, your company also demanded for unified security, because you don't want to be in a situation where you have one set of policies on-prem and another set of policies at the edge. You need to maintain that consistency of policy so that you can achieve, and let me just erase this, you can achieve that compliance or that control that you so desire in your organization. In this day and age, right, your network is your business. I dare say that all of you would agree with me on that statement. And because your network is your business, is your first point of contact, DNS is that foundational element in your network. DNS is your point that you will connect with, and as a result of that, your DNS can become your first line of detection and your first line of protection. And also DNS can give you that level of visibility, because DNS is that common denominating factor across on-prem, on cloud, and at the edge. Your business is shifting. You will have a situation of working from anywhere. You will have more as a service, from anywhere and everywhere. And on top of that, you will have new kinds of devices coming into the marketplace. Gartner has predicted by 2025, over 30 billion IoT devices. Now, that information that I've just said is about 2 years old. I don't have off the top of my head the latest information, but the point behind that is because of IPv6, we have more IoT devices coming to the market, more sensors, because of the drive towards smart city, autonomous vehicle. And the thing is that with all this coming into gear, it delivers greater services at the edge. But then the question that is raised is, how do you secure this? How do you look at managing and obtaining the visibility behind this? And also by 2025, 85% of enterprises will go towards a cloud-first principle, because most likely, most of the organization would have already embraced digital transformation in a very significant way, especially with COVID being the catalyst. And on the customer side, when they see this, they are not interested in what technologies you're using. They want it to be simple, and they want it to be transparent. They want it to be something that they can slide into, that works with them on how they expect to consume those technology. But at the same time, they want it to be reliable. They don't want something that breaks down. So just like in the past, when we used to serve a website, if the website takes more than 30 seconds to load, we go somewhere else. Same difference over here as well. If the services takes more than 30 seconds or 45 seconds to load onto your device, we will go somewhere else. That's why we look at 5G. We look at high performance internet speed and the likes of all of that, right? So reliability becomes an issue. Becomes an area of expectation and concern for end users. The other thing is scalability. From a service provider standpoint, you want your services to be able to scale upwards and downwards as and when the market demands, because you need to make sure that you are able to constantly meet to those requirements of the market. And last but not least, your customers, your partners, and your employees, while they expect all these three, they want this to be delivered to them in a secured fashion. So security is, again, another pillar in this new conundrum that we are seeing that's happening in the marketplace. So having described all of that, when we look at this, when we look at transformation, right, some of the security concerns are as follows. The attack surface have enlarged tremendously. There are many ways in and out of your organization today, so much so that it becomes really difficult to manage a perimeter to look at how do you protect that. On top of that, as you look at digitalizing some of your services, you increase your operational complexity and you enlarge your perimeter. So on that note, I'd like to just do a quick poll questions over here to find out from you, in your opinion, what are the different ways of getting in and out of your organization that you can see or experience today? We'll just take about 30 seconds or so to do this poll, because it will lead on to some of the points that I have later on.
So participants, I hope poll is visible to you all.
Yes.
Please quickly participate in this poll.
We've started having some interesting observations.
Very interesting indeed.
Let's also make it a little quicker. We just have few more seconds on this. Last 15 seconds. Let's see who can make it.
Yes, we reached 70%. So all are listening and actively participating. Remaining also, please.
Shall we close the poll?
Yes.
Sure.
We are closing this poll. Yeah, thank you, everyone.
And show them the results.
Yes.
So it's interesting that 17 of 23 of you, or about 74%, believe it's all of the above. Well, the answer is right. You are right. It is all of the above, and because there are 4 ways of getting into and out of the organization. When I first started my career, right, the main way of getting in and out of the organization was through your email. We will receive spam emails. You will get, I love you viruses, the Melissa virus. Everything was done on the email. And then there were constant spam and so on. But over time, the website, when we first introduced the website being that 7x24 storefront of all organizations, that became a line of target as well, with brute force attack, SQL injection, and also with watering holes taking place, to spoof you, to give out your credentials so that they can get they can enter your organization through impersonating your identity. In my last role, I was looking at and spent a lot of time speaking to customers about insider, malicious as well as accidental insider. And even Verizon report has also indicated that insider is a big concern. And one of the areas of insider is accidental human errors as well, or human carelessness. But right now, I also realize because at the advent of this year, after doing much research around, not at the advent of this year, but towards the middle of last year when I was doing a lot of research around DNS, I realized that DNS is another channel that is often exploited for infiltration and exfiltration into an organization. So I'm glad that about 74% of you agree with me that this is that all 4 areas are potential areas of getting in and out of the organization. And in this presentation, I will focus on the DNS angle. I will not talk about the other 3. We can have another session to talk about the other 3 if needed, but let's focus on the DNS avenue. So what is the DNS positioning? Why is this the channel that people often, or rather cyber criminals often exploit to get in and out of the organization? Well, let's go back to a bit of history. The whole cyber threat and response landscape, that entire evolution. Maybe we can stop sharing the poll already, the poll information. So when you look at this slide over here, the key takeaway is that it's a cat and mouse game, the whole cyber security, the cyber threat and cyber response landscape. When hackers introduced the worm, we had antivirus. When they did rootkit and spyware, we had IPS and firewall, and so on and so forth. So cyber APT, we had sandbox, and then with increased attack surface, we went on to threat intelligence and analytics and UEBA and the like of that. Now, one thing I want to draw your attention to is the color of the DNS arrow. It starts to get really red somewhere over here. And between 2010 to present day, I think this is something somewhere around 2015 and 2016. right? Can anybody in the audience just share with me, you can just unmute and just shout your answer. What was a significant event that happened around that time? If this was a physical session, I would have some chocolates or something to throw out to you, but being a virtual session, I don't have anything like that. I'm sorry.
Moving to hybrid
We
environment.
started getting answers,
Hello?
Vijay. Why don't we read that out?
Pawan said ransomware.
That's right. Very good. Pawan, good answer. It is ransomware. Ransomware came to fruition around that time. And what was the first ransomware that we all experienced? WannaCry. But what was our response when ransomware first came about? Now, we all know today ransomware is a command and control malware, right? It will do a callback. And for those of you who are not aware, the channel that it does the callback on is port 53, which is your DNS traffic. And that is the channel, and that is where they exploit. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. So ransomware came about. What was the market response? Our response was UEBA, DLP. We focus on all of those different areas, machine learning, artificial intelligence. We started to beef up all of that, thinking that that is a way to mitigate against, ransomware, right? Well, actually, what we should have done then was to really deep dive and focus on a DNS protection. So I want to put this in context around where does DNS exist in the normal kill chain. So this is your normal average hacker's kill chain, whereby they decide on what industries to attack with whatever solution they have. If they are going through the normal means in a delivery over here, they may use things like email to deliver, drive-by download to trick you into going to a website to download a payload, or even install a payload in the email for you to click on and then detonate in your machine. Or they may enter into your organization by some other means. But the point behind this is that they will look at some kind of delivery mechanism to infiltrate into your organization, to install the malware in your organization, and then to exfiltrate or to steal or to drive or to achieve their objectives. Different cyber criminals have different kinds of objectives, or different hackers, I beg your pardon, have different kinds of objectives. Cyber criminals are only interested in money. Okay, so when you put the DNS discussion into the light of this is what you get. In the reconnaissance stage, they will be doing DNS reconnaissance, but more importantly, in the delivery, you will have, as part of infiltration, DNS tunneling. Or in the infiltration, they'll do a DNS DDoS attack. Okay, a DNS DOS attack, so that you will then focus on the DOS without realizing that they are actually driving some other activities. They will also look at, hijacking your DNS, so they can spoof you into going into a compromised website to give out information, or they will load a DNS exploit to really attack your DNS defenses or your DNS platform. And in the callback, in the command and control over here, right, they'll call back. So this is the case of C2 kind of malware, whereby it does a callback to the host to get further instructions on what to do next. And again, tunneling over here is all about DNS exfiltration. So when you look at this, it can be easily summed up into a simple slide like this. Types of DNS attacks, it's all about infiltrating, and it's all about exfiltrating, and it's all about communication in the middle, right? Whereby they will look at various kinds of attacks. DNS hijack, whereby it's to redirect requests so that I can drive you into a phishing domain, or DNS cache poisoning, more for credentials. This is like a partial VPN, so to speak, or a mini kind of lookalike domain, whereby I poison the cache so that I drive you to what looks like a legitimate website. So a Google may look like this as opposed to like this, because you will not be able to see, what the writings are. It's just a redirect, and you go into those websites. DNS tunneling, infiltrating to your organization. DNS flooding or amplification is all about DDoS. It's all about disruption, right? DNS exploit, so to exploit the vulnerabilities of your DNS software in your organization, so that I then take control of your DNS. Because if I take control of your DNS, what did I say just now? DNS is your first line of contact. It can also be your first line of defense. It's your first point of contact in your organization. Any and every device that's trying to get in will look at that. But at the same time, right, on the exfiltration side, right, the tunneling is for data exfil and also DNS query, where you encrypt the data and you transfer it out. Okay. In the communication, there are three main communications. The callback, which is a C2 that is usually present in a lot of C2 communication, and encryption, new encryptions that's coming up, DNS over HTTPS and DNS over the TLS, dot and do, right? Different kinds of encryption over your browser, whereby now the user can be invisible to the company, and as a result of that, become susceptible to DNS hijack without realizing that they are endangering or threatening the organization. And that's something that is concerned with some of the executives that I know that I'm speaking to today. Lookalike domains. Domains, they are something like watering holes, but except they are not watering holes, because lookalike domains are domains that carries almost the same kind of characters as the actual website. Can you notice the difference between these two Yahoos? In the letter Y, and both of them are in the same font. And I just want to show you this very quickly. When you do a character map of that letter Y, it is of a different character mapping versus the normal letter Y of the English alphabet. So hackers are starting to exploit things like this so that when you enter, you think that, oh, I think it's a Yahoo website. Well, actually, it's not a Yahoo website. And the other thing, domain generation, DGAs, domain generation algorithms, which are what I call cat and mouse again, whereby you're constantly chasing after a domain, whereby the domain is trying to avoid you detecting it by constantly changing its name. And again, you need to look at how do you detect that, because these are domains that have malicious intent. So why is DNS so important? Because when you think about your current defense in depth, you are very much focused on port 83, port 80 and port 443. Remember just now, one of you said, one of the most common one of the most significant events that happened in 2015, ransomware. It's because after a while, you have built a sufficient defense in depth that it becomes increasingly difficult, expensive, and time-consuming for the hacker to infiltrate into your organization. They start looking at alternative ways of getting into the organization. So this is where they look at, getting in through your email, through your websites, or even through Insider. And if they get through Insider, how do they get the information out, right? This is where they exploit the DNS traffic, whereby the DNS is an unsecured traffic in your organization, and that's port 53, right? And through this traffic, what they're able to do is they are able to infiltrate and they're able to exfiltrate data and infiltrate malware into your organization. And quite frankly, when this started to happen, and if you look back at history again, the incidents from 2017, 2018, all the way up to present day, we are seeing more and more breaches that's taking place in the marketplace, right? So much so that, we continue to beef up our defense in depth in this area with DLP, for example, with UEBA, for example, with machine learning, for example, artificial intelligence. Not wrong, good things to have, but the thing is that when you're building a wall, there's no point in strengthening your wall when you have a hole somewhere along the wall for people to continuously come in and out of your environment, and that's your port 53. We need to block this, and we need to control all traffic that's coming up from this. And again, it's no fault of yours, because it wasn't until 2021 that even the security frameworks like NIST or even ISO 2700, or in Singapore, we have the TRM, the threat, the technology risk management report, that started talking about the importance of protecting your DNS platform, and to mitigate against things like hijacks and the like of those. Okay. So now that we have seen the value of DNS, right, I want to expand on this so that we take a bigger view on things by looking at how do we leverage on DDI. As I mentioned just now, DDI is all about your DNS, your DHCP, and your IPAM. How do you leverage on this? You already have this in your system. How do you leverage this? So just some very basic information right now. So your DNS is like your phone book. Your DHCP is like your switchboard, and then your IPAM is your device, is your telephone. But you have all this information, and that information is not contextualized to your business. So you're not able to harness it. But if you are able to harness it, this is the value that you can get from these different devices. Your DNS can become an area whereby you start to build security. You leverage on that to build security and to improve the security of your ecosystem. Your DHCP allows you, together with IPAM, gives you your visibility, right, and reporting, and also for forensics. So all this information you can harness and you can bring in, because what you have is a goldmine of information whereby DHCP gives you an audit trail, right, which will be good for forensics, for analysis. It tells you how long the machine was connected and the likes of all of that. Your IPAM gives you your business context, and your IPAM also gives you that visibility that you're looking for, because it captures all the different devices that's connected and where those different devices have gone through as a result of that. And your DNS gives you that activity audit trail. Okay, so with the DNS being at the foundation of all of this, working in concert with these three elements, in this current situation, when you are embracing digital transformation, what is happening is that you have moved away from on-premise to hybrid or on-premise to cloud. One or two are the pathway. But at this point in time, I believe this pure play is between 5 to 7% of the world companies, whereas the vast majority, 80% of companies are moving towards a hybrid situation whereby you have both on-prem and on the cloud. And look where DNS is located over here, on-premise and on the cloud. Now, for this to be successful, for you to think about a successful defense in depth together with DNS strategy, you need to combine three main elements. You need to have threat intelligence, threat insights, and the DNS security, or security on your DNS platform for you to drive this. Because when you start thinking about this in totality, you are currently in a situation whereby you are starting to modernize your network, whereby what used to be, traditional, say for example, your branch office or your work from home would then go back, will log back into your company's data center to go to the internet. This was your old model, a hub and spoke model, right? And with this, right, you have a challenge whereby if your network or if your current infrastructure is not robust, if you don't have SD-WAN, for example, it's going to be difficult to manage this. On top of that, if your data center goes down, then your entire operation here also goes down. Especially right now, you're embracing SaaS. You could have gone directly to the internet in that particular fashion, as described in this other situation, whereby the internet is your main point of accessing the information. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. But now with this, what you have is that you have one DNS here, another DNS here, right? And maybe another set of DNS at the edge over here. And these three DNS are of different branding and of different information. They are not harmonized. And this is where you will have, as described over here, limited visibility. And with limited visibility, right, you have fragmented control of this entire environment. Now, the thing about a cyber breach is that a breach is a situation that exploits vulnerability in your people, process, and technology. And with a fragmented control, it means that you do not have a cohesive security, either from a technology standpoint, or from a people education standpoint, or even from a process management standpoint. And hence, as a result of that, you have limited security. And when you have limited security, especially working in such a complex environment, you're prone to being breached. You're prone to being attacked. And it's easier for many organizations to fall victim and fall prey into the multiple attacks that we are currently seeing that's happening in the marketplace. And Accenture, a big company, was recently, breached by ransomware. Tokyo Marine, a large insurance company, was recently breached with ransomware as well. And we all know that ransomware takes advantage and exploits the DNS platform, either for infiltration or for callbacks or for data exfiltration. So we need to put a stop to this. Now, the reality is that even when we move to this stage over here into a modern environment, we still have another problem, because while before it is all fragmented like this, and we try to harmonize the situation like this, right? where before when we modernize, it all be fragmented like this. But we need to then look at how do we harmonize all the data, all the DNS, so that we have that holistic view of visibility for ourselves. And this is where, even if we try to do that, if this layer is not within our control, or if we are using different kinds of different DNS service providers, we will need to stitch the information together in a very manual process. Hence, making us prone to things like shadow IT because of limited visibility. So what we need to drive towards is a central management strategy, whereby we look at regaining that visibility, or rather regaining complete and holistic visibility, so that in turn we can drive better control and better security. Another way of looking at this slide, when I talk about this from a holistic standpoint, is this simple diagram over here, whereby by modernizing our platform and by harnessing and automating DDI services, this area over here is then put together in a unified grid, whether it's completely on-prem, or whether it's a hybrid or whether it's a cloud environment. Once you have this in this fashion, then what you get over here is unification. You have that unified and simplified manageability, and the ability to look at discovery, the ability to look at identifying shadow IT in your environment, and the ability to drive greater control for security. With that data that you have, to further expand on this conversation, right, you can then reuse that data. So imagine that data that you've now collected on-prem, on cloud. This becomes your internal intelligence, your internal insight that you can feed into either a tip or a tight environment, right, where this environment will ingest all of the different kinds of threat intelligence. So threat intelligence, as I said, is one of the critical elements that forms this particular security aspect. And it will be able to also ingest threat intelligence feeds from government feeds that you may have, especially for compliance-oriented organizations, or from marketplace, like you may buy Palo Alto threat intelligence or Fortinet threat intelligence, and any custom threat intelligence that you have, right? What my company actually offers is, threat intelligence that also covers these different vendors over here. But the point behind this is that this platform then ingest and normalize all the different indication of compromise to feed this information out in different formats to your firewall, to your email server, to your DNS security, to your cloud, so that you harmonize your security posture. And I'll illustrate that in just a moment as well. At the same time, you will be able to enrich your SIM event management and drive greater automation. So how does that work? So let me just quickly illustrate this with this simple explanation. Let's say, for example, a PC, right? One of the PCs in your environment has been ransomware. Okay, it has received a ransomware attack. The first thing that PC will do is it will do a callback to the host. Okay, now with DNS security, what we will be able to do, or what you will be able to do, I beg your pardon, is you will be able to detect a callback. So this becomes a C2. You detect the callback, you block the callback. So you sever the communication. But when you sever the communication, remember I talked about IPAM and so on, you will be able to capture the IP address of this malicious host. With that information, you can send that information to your next-gen endpoint, your next-gen firewall, your web gateway, and tell them that any traffic coming from this IP address to block. Okay. At the same time, you can communicate directly with your NAC to quarantine this device so that you don't allow the spread. So this is where threat containment comes into the picture. You don't allow any traffic from coming in, or better still, any traffic from leaving this device to spread that particular ransomware malware, right? You will be able to also send a message to your ITSM, maybe it's a ServiceNow or whatever other ITSMs that you're using, to inform help desk that this machine is in need of remediation. Now, this machine need not be located in your office environment. This machine can be working remotely or working from anywhere, and this will become the new environment, the new way of work. the new way of support, like what we are actually experiencing right now. And they will be able to identify which machine, what location, where is it located, to remedy the situation. That intel and that insight that you have will then also be shared with your SIM and your SAW to drive either greater enrichment of your insights on your events, or drive greater automation depending on what playbook the organization has. So that tide or tip, right? That tip, for example, is that platform that harnesses the different kinds of connection protocols to send the foundational information to the rest of your security stack. So some of the key benefits you get from that, right? And these are just some of the examples of the different brands, if you're currently using, that you should be able to harmonize and exploit and take advantage in that automated process. Because by doing that, when you automate in normal circumstances, when you think of your damage, the greatest amount of damage, if you did not have automation, is in the first 24 hours. This is the impact to your organization. But with automation, when you look at streamlining and when you look at your devices working together in concert holistically, you may bring this down to just this much. So this is the damage you actually experience as a result of the breach. So you're able to contain that breach. So at the end of the day, what you really are driving towards is threat containment, which is very important. You automate your incident responses because we need to work in pace with the level of speed that the attack is coming in so that we can contain, we can quarantine it, right? And at the same time, because we share, or you are able to share the information across your different security device, what was previously siloed solution, cybersecurity solution, will be able to share in harmonized security posture across your entire organization. So you won't have a situation of this device is a brick wall, this other security device is a picket fence, right? And at the same time, because you will have agents on manage and approve devices at the edge, that then becomes your new perimeter. You know, the DNS can become the second layer of defense against any attempted infiltration into your organization, right? We reduce human error because the vast majority of the initial parts are all automated. And at the same time, we drive greater effectiveness and drive greater ROI of your existing security stack and the harmonized posture. And these are benefits that I know a lot of organizations we've spoken to are very interested in. So it's not a rip and replace solution because, as I said, there are 4 ways in and out of the organizations. With DNS, if you're able to harness that information, you can exploit that information to really enrich your current solutions that you have. And one of the ways you can actually do as a quick litmus test is to look at a DNS security assessment, right? And what this assessment does is it actually helps you to identify any compromised devices, that are currently in your environment that is communicating with malicious internet services, or any data that has been exfiltrated. It will be able to tell you upfront what it is, so that you have that quick snapshot. Okay, and this is just a quick sample of what one of these assessment report looks like. DNS activities, malware activities, any data loss, and any questionable categories, and what kind of actions you need to review and take. And at the same time, it tells you the types of threats, the activities by the types of threats that's happening. And these are things that you want to have, so that you know the severity of those kinds of threats to the organization. So one of the questions posed to me early on is, what was the best practices? Well, some of the best practices for DNS is use a dedicated DNS appliance. Now, I know that some companies are saying that, I've got a firewall, I can extend my firewall to the DNS and everything, but then you will then derail and really tax your firewall, taking it away from other more important activities. Because remember, I'm not saying that DNS replace your port 80. It does not. DNS focus on port 53. You still need to defend your port 80 and port 443. So use the right tools for the right kind of defenses. So use a dedicated DNS appliance because it's single focus. You can drive high availability. It's easy to manage and easy to maintain, and it delivers greater level of security as a result of that. Keep your DNS, server software up to date. That's very important. So similar to the normal firewalls, you need to keep it up to date as well. Have a backup online, on site, because just in case the DNS is compromised, right, you have something else to quickly replace it. Because remember, the DNS is the heart of your network, is the first point of contact. So therefore, it should be the first point of defense as well. And avoid setting up a situation whereby you have multiple points of failure. So think through your entire workflow to decide exactly how you want to drive this. And turn off recursive server, on your authority server, because your authority server, your authoritative server, is where a lot of your DNS data is actually stored. Don't allow it to be open to allow any DNS server from outside to communicate with your authority server. So turn off your recursion. Okay. So key takeaways. You need to secure your digital transformation journey and all the associated assets, and we've highlighted. And with that, the entire approach becomes more complicated, more sophisticated, and more complex. DNS is everywhere on your digital footprint. So why not use it? Why not milk it? Why not harness the information that you have over there to drive unified visibility, to drive better control, better automation, which in turn gives you better security overall. Now, we will be able to give you information that even before a phishing attack happens or a malicious website actually comes to bear, because they will need to handshake with your DNS server to allow that communication to come through. See, so the DNS server and DNS security can actually help you avoid business disruption because of some mitigation with DDoS. Now, we don't block all DDoS. You still need some of the other DDoS solutions, anti-DDoS solutions to help you with that. But we still take care of some of them. It prevents data exfiltration and malware infiltration. Very, very big thing right now. The one thing that we're seeing a lot happening in the marketplace is news on ransomware. And as a result of the ransomware attacks that's happening everywhere, data exfiltration. So the more companies we're speaking to, the more they realize the criticality of this. And from a business angle, they want to also protect their customer value. So DDI can be that foundation, can provide that foundational information to boost and improve your entire ecosystem, which is critical. Harmonize your threat posture and drive that automation. So please consider, for those of you who may be interested, and I'm just putting on a bit of an info blocks hat over here, our security assessment, or invite us for a discussion. And with that, I'd like to hand over to Harsh. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you so much, Alvin. In fact, I have got a question, one directly. In fact, I've got two questions, so I'll answer both of, ask you those questions now. One is how Infoblox is different from Cisco Umbrella in terms of technology.
In terms of technology, there are some similarities and some differences. The one most significant difference is Umbrella is only on cloud, and we have both cloud and on-premise. And the other thing is that Cisco Umbrella is very focused just on the security bit, whereas we have both the networking and security. So if you go back to this slide over here, and let me just clean it up, right? Cisco Umbrella will be very focused just in this area, which is just one of the two main pillars that's holding up the business. Whereas Infoblox will have this pillar and this pillar. And the other thing is that we are able to get this DDI information across to your existing security stack. So you are able to look at improving the overall total cost of ownership. So it does not become a single cost to the organization, but a cumulative cost that improves the other parts of your business. So it's no longer a one-off purchase, but a cumulative benefit from the one-off purchase, the multiplier effect, so to speak.
Okay. I think thanks for answering this. We've got a few more questions on the chat box, but before that, let's take up Santosh because
yes,
he has raised his
Santosh,
hand.
please. Santosh, okay. You can unmute and ask your question.
He is, in fact, I think just okay. Yeah.
Just write a question on chat. You can consider that.
Definitely. We've got a question that can Radware Defense Pro used for DNS security?
Say that again, Ken.
Radware Defense Pro be used for DNS security?
Radware Defense. Okay, I'm not very familiar with Radware Defense. I assume this is the word you're referring to, right? So if that's the case, maybe that maybe Harsh, you can help me collect the person's name and email address, and we can get back to the person on this question.
Sure,
Sure.
sure. We'll do that.
That's okay with me. Yes.
Yes,
We'll discuss.
Santosh. Sure, Santosh. That can work.
So participants, if you have any more questions, please put in the chat
Yes,
box.
yes, there are more questions, which I'll just take that up. We also have another question from Pawan. Do you have any agent client for mobile device, and do you have a hybrid solution?
We do have an hybrid solution for, so our solution is actually on-prem, completely on-prem if need be. And with the on-prem, we also have discovery solutions and load balancing and so on and so forth. When you expand to hybrid, the on-prem solution moves into the on-prem, and we also have a cloud solution. Now, if we come across a pure play, we also have a pure cloud solution as well. So it depends on what is the business model. And when we have the conversation with the customers, we usually try to identify what and how do they actually deliver business value to their audience, to their customers, so that we can map to that. Because again, it's very important for us to maintain this discussion over here about making sure that we are in sync with the way that they are actually doing business. There was another question besides the on-prem.
Agent or client for mobile device?
For devices, yes, we have agents, but for mobile devices, we don't have agents yet. But for your PCs and for your PCs, in order for us to, based on the previous example that I've described just now, in order for us to be able to give you the holistic visibility of what's happening across your entire platform, even with devices at the edge and everything, like your notebooks working from home and everything, and securing your notebooks with the connection that's coming back to the office, you need to install an agent onto your notebook so that we can track and monitor and also ensure that when that notebook is compromised, we can do the necessary action to contain and prevent that threat from spreading to other parts of the business.
Fair enough, fair enough. Do we have any other questions?
Not yet, Harsh.
First one question over here. First one question over here.
Yeah,
Yes,
Jit.
yes,
Now, now in case of hybrid solution, like is there any particular capacity sizing, like how long it will sustain within the on-premise, and then it goes on to, I would say, cloud-based solution? And is that particular cloud-based solution any particular specific vendor that we need to think about, or like we can have it our own, I would say, separate cloud services that we can think about?
When you're talking about separate cloud services, are you talking about, like, for example, an Amazon or a Google or anything like that? Okay.
Correct.
So we are present on AWS in terms of on cloud solution, right? And that's been our default platform that we actually use. And I believe that there is an AWS server in India itself. In terms of the capacity of the on-prem solution, this is where, right sizing it to your current capacity is really, really important. This is where our consultants will spend time with you to really understand your entire business, your entire capacity, and the entire landscape, so that you are given the right amount of capacity and to map your business.
Okay, fine. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Jitendra, thank you for asking the question, and thanks, Alvin, for answering it. Can we have any other questions before we wrap up?
Yeah, Alvin, this is Srinivas here. As we discussed earlier, so we are in migration of on-premises, cloud, and hybrid, and 3 models we are working on it. So how to start with, whether I can go for on-premises first, later I can migrate with your solution on the cloud. So how the business model will be migrated?
It depends on what you want to start with. I mean, the easiest way is, and I always use, and maybe I'll just let's see now.
Because my concern is because it will take at least another year to migrate to the hybrid environment from the on-premises now.
Correct.
So that is the concern actually.
The way that I'll take the conversation is this. So you have your assets, right? So you have this thing called impact to the business and probability of attack. And all your assets will then be lined up accordingly, right, in this particular assessment. So the way that I would like to take this kind of conversation with the customer is those that have the highest impact and the highest probability of attack on your organization should be the one that you embark on this particular service, whether is it on-prem or on the cloud. This is where the conversation then needs to be further harmonized and honed into the nature of your business. Because the last thing you want to do is to look at protecting, this part versus this part when this part is most critical to your organization. The cloud deployment is very fast, right? But the on-premise deployment, that one will take some time.
Oh,
I hope that answers your question.
yes. And also I received as requested, you have conveyed me the way of the business value, which I need to address with my board, right? So
Correct.
I insight
Correct.
insight from your side on the foundation of information business
Correct.
value.
Correct. And with the foundation informations, what we can help you talk through is also perhaps even capital recycling. If there is an overlap in terms of thread feeds that you're getting from some vendors that we are already providing, like for example, you're subscribing to Proofpoint, we are already giving you Proofpoint together with our cloud solution or together with our threat defense. Then you can stop subscription of Proofpoint and pump that money into something else altogether as you acquire our solution. So if there's any areas that we look at, again, looking at a business functionality perspective, if there's an opportunity for us to help you and discuss with you about capital recycling, I'm sure your CFO will be more than interested to hear that and also give you the talking points around the business value of the solution in terms of how does it continue to protect your business.
Great. Thanks, Alvin. Thanks for your.
You're welcome.
Vijay, do you think we have any other questions, or maybe you would also like to share some question or input here?
Oh, I guess there is no more questions, and if time permits, Vinny would like to add something to this. So there is no more questions, Has.
No, Vijay. I
I
think
would like
thank
to
you so
add-
much.
Okay, I'd like to add one more thing. I have one of my colleagues here. His name is Sukminder, right? He's the guy who has the blue background with the blue turban, right? He is also from InfoBlocks, and if you have any questions or if you want to arrange for discussions, you can reach out to him as well. So Sukminder, maybe you want to just say a few words?
Please do.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Alvin. I think great session and very well articulated in terms of what are the security postures that the new organizations are taking, new enterprise which are moving, because as you rightly pointed out, 85% of the organization would have some sort of a cloud strategy by 2025. So the solution, in fact, which Alvin has proposed, he has already spoken about the DNS as well as the DNS security. I was listening to few questions which were raised during the session. So happy to answer in case anybody would like to. Vinny has the details. I think Harsh or Vijay, you can reach out to us for any further queries. Thank you.
Definitely. Thanks.
Very much. Thank you, Sukhminder and Vinny, for your kind comments. And Sukhminder, definitely we'll get in touch. And I can already see, the kind of discussion that Alvin has done, actually taking a step-by-step, kind of a business case approach to, kind of deducing and, kind of deducing DNS as a strategy. I think we have definitely achieved that objective today. And I think everyone will totally agree with us. And we actually could see how DNS is there not only just the first line of contact, but it can actually become the first line of defense with the kind of strategy Alvin has brought, especially to address the major challenges in terms of the limited visibility and limited security. And of course, Alvin, while all of us are aware how COVID has been a catalyst to the digital transformation, it was still, astonishing to actually realize through that McKinsey report that how, about 30 to 40 times faster the business had to enable work from home, the online business operations, and the hybrid IT. Well, there is no doubt that this has been a Herculean task. There is a much bigger task in terms of securing work from, home also left out. And like Sukhminder quoted and Alvin has already shared, by 2025, we are actually going to be 85% on total cloud first principle approach. We have to move faster. And to gain that unified visibility, to gain that, kind of a threat intelligence and, kind of a visibility across the different, you can say the different platforms that you may be having, and gain that first level defense itself against cyber attacks. DNS as a strategy, DNS as a security strategy is definitely that needs to be looked upon. And thank you so much, Alvin. I think we all got quite a bit of intelligence and feeds on this excellent session. And I think already wonderful comments have started coming up for you, Alvin, and the team. And thank you, Vinny. Thank you, Sukhminder, also for joining in. Thank you, everyone, for your valuable time. And I'm sure the question answer sessions were also quite insightful. We could gain some additional, feed through it. So thank you, Santosh, Pavan, Jitendra, and Srinivasan as well for that.
Thank you very much,
Thank you,
everybody.
and
Thank you,
thank-
everyone.
So if you have
Thank
any
you.
questions, you can always drop us